These are the EPZ Q5 Pro, and I'm quite happy that I've finally sat down with these and actually spent some time over the last few days with this. Now, I have been meaning to do this review for quite a while, but thank you to the folk at EPZ for making this review possible by sending me this demo unit. All thoughts and opinions are my own, of course, and thank you for being so patient for waiting for this review, of course. I've been sitting on this for quite a while. And it has been one of the many products on my desk, but thankfully I'm here. And I have to say, I really do like these IEMs now. The way they sound overall, I mean, is a little bit different compared to other IEMs that are available in the market. And this is something I remember noticing even with the other set of EPZ IEMs that I did review. So I like that they are sticking to their own kind of tunings and not following the crowd when it comes to that. So anyway, quite quickly, I'll jump into how these are built. So of course, when you do unbox these, you do get everything you need in the box. You get the IEMs in the box, of course, and you also do get the cable that is attached to the IEMs. You will also get small, medium and large ear tips in the box, and you also get a little carrying case as well, and that's about it. Nothing too fancy, but you get everything you need. Moving on to the IEMs, they do have a nice overall finish to them. Now, EPZ is known for manufacturing a whole lot of resin enclosures, and I think they've done something over here as well with this. It is definitely a very well finished set of IEMs compared to some other IEMs in the market, and these are definitely a very compact version as well. Comfort wise, I found these to feel almost like they're not in my ear because of how compact and tight they are, and they do have broad nozzles. So if you do have other ear tips that have a wider sort of mount, they will fit on this quite easily. And if you have a very small openings for your ear canal, you'll have to keep that in mind. Now, the cable does have 0.78 terminations where it connects to the IEM, and it does have a nice tight loop. So it does stick very close to my ear whenever I wear these, and the loop is firm and tight enough so as to not make this feel like it's going to fall off anytime soon. The other end of the cable is terminated to a 3.5 mm jack, and it is a nice metal finish, much like these 0.78 connectors are. It is a nice contrasting color, so it really pops in contrast to the cable. Speaking about the cable, it is a thin cable. It's not exactly the fattest or the thickest out there, and very sadly, it is kind of, well, it's the opposite of tangle free. I have found myself battling with this a few times whenever I've taken it out of the carry case, or generally even picking it up off my table. It does need some sort of tussling, but once you do get it up and open, it is all right, of course, when you have it straightened out. Another thing to keep in mind is because of the material they've used, it is microphonic. So if the cable does rub against your shirt, or even if it taps against a desk, you will hear that sound resonating through the cable, which is something to keep in mind. Moving on to how these sound, well, it does have a 10 mm dynamic driver with a dual cavity construct. It does have a frequency response of 20 Hz all the way up to 20,000 Hz, and has a very easy to drive low resistance of just 24 ohms. And speaking about resistance, when it comes to its volume, I have driven this with an i5 Gold Link. It is one of my favorite little portable DAC amps, of course, and I found myself sitting at around maybe 25% volume most of the time. But when you start cranking up to about 30, it does fill out a lot more. It's a lot of fun there. But the minute I go up to about 35-40% volume, it's a little too loud for me. So I would not recommend listening to this at loud volumes over prolonged periods of time, if you intend on preserving your hearing, of course. When it comes to its soundstage, it performs like most other IEMs. It does have a little bit of stage that extends from further out of the IEM, but again, this does occur rarely. It does depend a lot on the kind of recording you're listening to and the kind of mastering it has been through. It does perform fairly well. It's definitely not a slouch when it comes to its overall staging. Good left and right separation with a dead center phantom channel. In fact, I normally don't game much, but I have tried gaming with this. And I remember really enjoying that gaming session because the way, certain vehicles, I was playing a racing game, and the vehicles whipping around me, it was very detailed and definitely very defined. So if you are somebody who's looking for a nice gaming set of earphones, I would say this does pretty well. When it comes to its imaging, it does detail fairly well. Now, I wouldn't say it's the best detail, or should I say the best when it comes to its overall detail recovery. It does give you a sense of there being a slight veil, and I don't mean veiled in the sense it's slightly warmer sounding. It's not exactly a warm sounding set of IEMs, but then again, there is just a bit of a sheer over all the image that, or should I say the details that I would like to listen to. I think if you spend a little bit more on more premium IEMs, maybe in the 6,000-7,000 range, you will get something that it doesn't have that veil, but this of course is a little more affordable than those. So I mean, it does fine. This is obviously not for the person who's very particular or into critical listening. If you're very particular about the detailed recovery you want, this may not be for you. If you're into more of a casual listen, but you want enough detail to focus in on everything you're listening to, it's great for, especially if you're focusing on instrumental music, or even if you just, want to hear instruments, whether they're reeded or string, you name it. So I'd say imaging it's fine. I mean, it's not the best out there, but it's not bad at the same time. When it comes to its timbre or timbre, the last few things I mentioned will obviously give you a sense of how it'll sound. It's definitely not the most natural sounding set of IEMs out there, but at the same time, it kind of gets there. I'm being overly critical right now because I just want to make sure that you guys understand how these IEMs are. Then again, it's fine if you're into just enjoying your music and you don't want to really criticize the music you're listening to. It's great. I mean, it does fairly well. It's true enough. It's detailed enough. You can tell a guitar is a guitar and you can tell a piano is a piano very easily, and you can sort of distinguish tonal qualities fairly well. So it's definitely not bad when it comes to its overall timbre. Moving on to its high frequencies, well, this is definitely an elevated area. They have tuned it to be a little tweaked, but at the same time, I like that they've not gone overboard. And if I'm not mistaken, the last set of EPZs also did sound a little bit like this. At no point have I found the highs to be fatiguing. At no point is it difficult to listen to over prolonged periods of time. At no point do shimmers or reverb over enunciate. It's just right. It's sort of very comfortable with what it's doing. So I'd say if you are into hearing decay in the higher frequencies, reverb, or if you've heard or you want to hear recordings that are recorded in cathedrals or just very open spaces, this does a good job of it. It's definitely not lacking over there. Moving on to the mids, well, the mid frequencies is where it gets kind of interesting because it does have a bit of an elevation in the upper mid range. And it does, if you're somebody who looks at graphs, it does look like it's going to be a little too overemphasized over there, but it doesn't really step into the boundary of being sibilant. It's very well controlled over there. I've gone through male and female vocals a lot while listening to this, and I've been genuinely trying to look for just one fault or just one moment of sibilance, and it doesn't really get to a point where it breaks through and cuts the ear. It's pretty easy on the ear. It's never really crossed that line. Now, again, mentioning the vocals, the lower mid-range is a bit on the recessed side, but it somehow manages to maintain a good amount of roundedness with male and female vocals. Yes, it sounds a little thinner than I'd like, but at the same time, there is presence with male and female vocals. So this range in particular, the way it's tuned, I personally really do like it for the way it handles a lot of classical music. Instrumental stuff sounds really good because over there you don't have the sense of a vocal going thin. So I'd say it leans more, for me at least, towards instrumental music, jazz, blues, minus the vocals from those. It is very enjoyable in that range. Then again, if you're okay with slightly thinner lower mids, vocals are just right. Moving on to the lower frequencies, well, there does appear to be a bit of an accentuation over here, but I've noticed that it's very sensitive with the distance it has from my eardrum. So when it's pushed further in, it sounds very flat sounding. It suddenly sounds like it's almost a studio tuning, almost like there's a recess in the lower frequencies. But you pull it out a little bit, and when you get that little bit of distance away from the eardrum, it does sound like it's got a lot more prominent bass. This is not a set of IEMs that is bass enthusiastic. It is definitely not going to loosen up your earwax. It is definitely not going to impress somebody if they're coming from a set of wireless earphones. This is not tuned to be bass, obnoxious. It's just right. It's just adequate, I'd say, for a lot of people. For me, I'd say it's absolute Goldilocks because for the genres that I've mentioned, it works absolutely beautifully for those. The minute you start throwing heavier stuff at this, it lacks a lot of weight and body in the sub-low region. Then again, something does tell me if you've thrown up a set of foam ear tips on this, that might change because I think these ear tips didn't exactly. I've swapped through all the ear tips that are provided, and they somehow don't seem to grip onto my ear canal very well. So they do feel like they move ever so slightly now and then, so I have to keep sort of readjusting them. But if you do slap on foam ear tips on this, I think it's going to be a very secure and stable fit. So you're not going to have that issue of, it's sounding a little bit different. But of course, depending on how far in or further out it is from your eardrum, I think it'll make a difference in the lower frequencies. Now, I have thrown some electronic dance music at this, which is a bit bizarre, I know, but it does have extension. It definitely reaches frequencies more prominently than I think it would in the lower sub range. It definitely does that, but it doesn't have that oomph, almost like a lot of people like that kick, like there's a separate subwoofer around. This doesn't do that, and I like that it's not like that because it maintains this kind of tuning. There's no loss in detail in the entire mid and high frequency range as well. So overall, it is a very nice set of IEMs. In fact, to be very honest with you, because of how flat it did sound at certain points whenever I had the IEMs further in my ear, they sounded very studio-like. So the thing is, it reminded me so much of a set of monitor speakers I had during my audio engineering days, and those are typically tuned to be almost very flat-lined from the highs to the mids, and then there's a recess, in fact, in the subs. In the lower frequencies, it sounds a lot like that when you push it further into your ear, and I think that's great for, especially if you yourself are into audio and you're doing a few tweaks and tuning, and you want a flatter response. It's great for that. In fact, it details well enough. It's not really. You shouldn't expect too much out of a set of IEMs that cost as much as this. Then again, it does have a few negatives, like I did mention. The cable is microphonic. It does tangle up now and then. I have had that issue with this. It is a bit of a struggle, but once it's on, you're comfortable with it. But otherwise, on a sound front, it is enjoyable. But I'd say, don't throw your dream theaters at this, and don't throw anything too heavy. Even if it's natural instruments, it's not too enthusiastic in the low frequencies. With busy tracks, it's not that it is unable to resolve that and give you all the detail and separation. It does that very well. It's just that if you're looking for a body from these IEMs in the lower frequency, it's certainly not going to do that as well as some other IEMs that are emphasized that much more in the low frequencies. But anyway, this has been my experience. Other people's may vary. But anyway, moving on to the price. If you do want to pick this up, at the moment of recording this video, these do appear to have a maximum retail price of about 4,999 rupees here in India, but you can buy it for about 4,290, and I'll leave the link down below and how much this costs abroad in dollars as well. Is this a good set of IEMs for this price? I'd say if you're in the hobby right now, if you're starting up, this is a great beginner set. But honestly, considering how good IEMs are in the slightly more expensive segment, see, these are almost 5,000 rupees. So, okay, 4,000. If you spend another 3 and get something in the 7,000 range, but then again, for a lot of people, it's difficult to reach there. But if you can, I'd say yes, diminishing returns, but you get something a little crisper, a little sharper. You can get some things with slightly better bass response without compromising in the mids. But that's a whole different price segment for a lot of people. So, if you do have this kind of budget, this kind of IEM does make a lot of sense to go for. And EPZ, I think, is a good company to go for all in all, because I think they're fairly new in the market and they're sticking to their guns. They're not being influenced by, other people's tunings, or they're just not trying to replicate what other people have done. So it's nice to see that a brand like EPZ is definitely doing their own thing. So there you have it. That's my review on the Q5 Pro by EPZ, and I do hope that I've helped you make some sort of purchase decision. If you would like to help support the channel, I'm sure you know exactly how to. But of course, thank you for tuning in for some sound advice.